darkness swallows everything down here. That's what veteran caver Thomas Reeves thought as his headlamp flickered against the jagged limestone walls of Serpent's Throat Cave in western Montana. The beam caught something unusual in the distance, a reflection that shouldn't exist this deep underground. His heart pounded as he moved closer, the beam revealing what appeared to be dozens of shoes scattered across the muddy floor. Some looked decades old, others disturbingly new. Between them lay what could only be described as bones. "I've been exploring caves for 15 years, Thomas would later tell authorities, his voice still shaking. But nothing prepared me for what I found 300 feet below the surface that day. Nothing prepares you for the moment you realize you might not be alone in the darkness." What Thomas discovered that February morning in 2018 would spark one of the most disturbing mysteries in modern caving history, one that remains unsolved to this day. If you're fascinated by the unexplained horrors lurking beneath our feet, you're in the right place. Today we're diving into 6 of the most disturbing caving incidents ever documented. Before we continue, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. The first incident takes us to the remote wilderness of Montana, where what began as a routine exploration revealed something that defies explanation. Thomas Reeves had been mapping the lesser-known passages of Serpent's Throat Cave for months. The cave system, largely unexplored until recent years, had become something of an obsession for the 34-year-old geologist. On February 12, 2018, Thomas and his small team of 3 fellow cavers decided to venture into a newly discovered branch they'd spotted on their previous expedition. The entrance was tight, Thomas recalled in the footage he later uploaded to his YouTube channel, Cavern Quest. "We had to remove our packs and push them ahead of us, just to squeeze through. That should have been our first warning." The footage shows Thomas leading the way, his breathing heavy as he navigates the narrow passage. The limestone walls press in from all sides, creating a claustrophobic tunnel barely wider than his shoulders. For nearly 20 minutes, the team crawls through this suffocating space before it finally opens into a larger chamber. "We called it the vestibule," Thomas narrates as the camera pans across the cathedral-like space. "It was beautiful, pristine formations that had never seen human eyes before. But the beauty of the vestibule was merely a prelude to what lay beyond. As the team ventured deeper, following a small underground stream, Thomas's headlamp caught something unusual in the distance. At first I thought it was just more calcite formations," Thomas says in the video. "But as we got closer, I realized what I was seeing didn't belong in a cave. Not naturally anyway." The camera zooms in, focusing on what appears to be a reflection on the cave floor ahead. Thomas approaches cautiously, his footsteps echoing in the silence. "Do you see that reflection?" Thomas whispers to his teammates. "I'm going to check it out." What happens next is the moment that transformed this ordinary caving expedition into something far more disturbing. As Thomas's light illuminates the area more clearly, we see dozens, perhaps hundreds, of shoes scattered across the muddy floor. Some appear decades old, deteriorating in the damp environment. Others look disturbingly new. "Oh my God," a female voice says off camera. "What is this?" Thomas pans the camera slowly across the bizarre collection. Work boots, sneakers, children's shoes with cartoon characters still visible on their sides. Hiking boots caked with mud. Some are arranged in pairs, others lie isolated, as if their owners simply stepped out of them and walked away. "Wait," Thomas says suddenly, his voice tight with tension. "Look between them." The camera shifts, focusing on what appears to be bones scattered among the footwear. Long, yellowed fragments partially buried in the mud. "That's a bone right there," Thomas says, pointing. "And another. And another." One of his teammates, a wildlife biologist named Sarah, kneels to examine the remains. "These aren't human," she says after a moment. "The proportions are wrong. This looks like deer, maybe elk." The team collectively exhales, but the relief is short-lived. As they venture further into the chamber, Thomas's light catches something else. A spine, partially intact, curving out of the mud like some prehistoric fossil. "Sarah?" Thomas calls, his voice wavering. "What about this one?" Sarah examines it carefully, her expression hidden behind her helmet. "This is different," she says finally. "I can't say for certain what this belonged to." By this point, the atmosphere in the cave has changed completely. What began as excitement has transformed into unease. The team decides to document everything and leave as quickly as possible. "We need to report this," Thomas says as they begin their retreat. "Something isn't right here." And that's where the original video ends. Thomas uploaded it 3 days later with a brief description. "Unexplained discovery in Serpent's Throat Cave. If anyone has information about this site, please contact local authorities." The video quickly went viral, accumulating millions of views and thousands of comments speculating about the origin of the shoes and bones. Theories range from the mundane to the macabre. Some viewers suggested the chamber might be a dumping ground for a serial killer, a theory supported by the remote location and the variety of footwear that could potentially belong to victims. Others pointed to the possibility of flooding, suggesting that the shoes might have been carried into the cave by water during heavy rains. Local law enforcement did investigate the site, though they never publicly released their findings. Thomas posted 4 more videos in the weeks following the discovery, but none addressed the shoe chamber directly. Then mysteriously his channel went silent. No new uploads, no updates, no explanation. I managed to track down Sarah, the biologist from the original expedition, who agreed to speak with me on condition of anonymity. "What we found in that cave haunts me," she told me. The official explanation was that the bones were all animal remains, likely dragged there by predators over many years. The shoes were attributed to illegal dumping that had been washed into the cave system during floods. When I asked if she believed this explanation, Sarah was silent for a long moment. "I've spent my career studying animal remains," she said finally. "What we found, some of it didn't match any species I'm familiar with, and the arrangement wasn't random. It felt deliberate." Sarah confirmed that Thomas had stopped caving after the incident. His last known communication was a text message to the team. "Some things should stay buried. I'm done." To this day, Serpent's Throat Cave remains a mystery. The chamber has reportedly been sealed off by authorities, though they've never officially acknowledged its existence. The truth about what Thomas and his team discovered may never come to light. But before you dismiss this as just another internet mystery, consider this. In the 3 years following the discovery, 7 hikers have gone missing within a 5-mile radius of the cave entrance. None have been found, and in each case, searchers recovered a single item belonging to the missing person, a shoe. If you're finding this as unsettling as I am, take a moment to hit that like button. It helps more people discover these mysteries, and maybe, just maybe, someone out there has the answers we're looking for. Our second incident takes us to the labyrinthine passages of Hollow Mountain Cave in Kentucky, where 2 brothers experienced a nightmare that would forever change how they approached the underground world. Michael and Ryan Cooper had been exploring caves together since childhood. Their YouTube channel, Subterranean Brothers, had gained a modest following for their thorough documentation of lesser-known cave systems throughout the American Southeast. In March 2021, they set their sights on conquering one of the most challenging sections of Hollow Mountain, a notoriously difficult passage known as the Squeeze. "We've been through some tight spots before," Michael says in the opening of their video, adjusting his helmet camera as they prepare to enter the cave. "But the Squeeze is legendary. Cavers have been turning back at this point for decades." The footage shows the brothers navigating the initial sections of Hollow Mountain with practiced ease. They move efficiently through the entrance chamber, their headlamps cutting through the darkness as they descend deeper into the earth. The cave gradually narrows, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees through muddy passages. "This is just the warm-up," Ryan jokes, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. "The real fun starts about half a mile in." For nearly 40 minutes, we watch as the brothers push deeper into the cave system. They pass through a series of chambers, each more impressive than the last. Vast rooms filled with stalactites and stalagmites that have formed over thousands of years. But as they progress, the passages become increasingly narrow and complex. "This is where people start getting turned around," Michael explains, pointing to a junction where 3 different tunnels branch off in different directions. Hollow Mountain is basically a 3-dimensional maze. Take a wrong turn, and you could be wandering for hours. The brothers had meticulously mapped their route beforehand, marking key junctions with reflective tape to ensure they could find their way back. But even with these precautions, the complexity of the cave system was daunting. Finally, after nearly an hour of crawling and climbing, they reached the entrance to the squeeze, a narrow vertical crack in the rock face that appears barely wide enough for a human body. "This is it," Ryan says, his excitement palpable. "The gateway to the unexplored section. According to the old-timers, there's a massive chamber on the other side that almost nobody has seen." The brothers decide that Ryan, being slightly smaller, will attempt the squeeze first while Michael waits at the entrance. If Ryan makes it through successfully, Michael will follow. "Stay in voice contact the whole time," Michael instructs as Ryan prepares to enter the narrow passage. "If I can't hear you for more than a minute, I'm coming in after you." Ryan nods, takes a deep breath, and begins to edge sideways into the crack. The camera on his helmet shows the claustrophobic reality of the squeeze. Solid rock pressing in from both sides. The passage so narrow that he has to exhale completely just to inch forward. "It's tight," Ryan's voice comes through, strained with effort. "Really tight, but I think I can make it." For several agonizing minutes, we watch as Ryan struggles through the passage, contorting his body to navigate around protruding rocks and narrow sections. His breathing becomes increasingly labored, but he continues to push forward. "I think I see light ahead," he says finally. "A bigger space. I'm almost through." With one final push, Ryan emerges into a larger chamber on the other side of the squeeze. His helmet camera reveals a stunning space filled with pristine formations, delicate crystal structures that glitter in the beam of his headlamp. "Michael, you've got to see this," he calls back through the passage. "It's incredible." But there's no response. "Michael?" Ryan calls again, louder this time. "Can you hear me?" Silence. Ryan turns back toward the squeeze, his headlamp illuminating the narrow crack he just passed through. "Michael, are you there?" he shouts, a note of concern entering his voice. Still nothing. "He must have gone to check something out," Ryan mutters to himself, though the uncertainty in his voice is clear. "I'll explore a bit here and then head back." Ryan spends the next 20 minutes documenting the chamber, but his enthusiasm has clearly been dampened by the lack of communication with his brother. Finally, he decides to return through the squeeze to find Michael. "I'm coming back through," he calls as he approaches the narrow passage. "Michael, if you can hear me, say something." The return journey through the squeeze proves even more difficult than the initial passage. Ryan struggles to navigate the tight spaces, his movements becoming increasingly desperate as concern for his brother mounts. When he finally emerges on the other side, Michael is nowhere to be seen. "Michael!" Ryan shouts, his voice echoing through the empty chamber. "Where are you?" What follows is 30 minutes of increasingly frantic searching as Ryan attempts to locate his brother in the maze-like cave system. He retraces their steps, checking each junction and side passage they had passed earlier. "This doesn't make sense," Ryan says, his voice tight with fear. "He wouldn't just wander off. We never split up. That's our #1 rule." As time passes, Ryan's panic grows. His breathing becomes rapid, and the camera footage grows increasingly erratic as he moves faster through the passages, calling his brother's name. "Michael! Michael, please answer me!" After what seems like an eternity of searching, Ryan stops to catch his breath and collect his thoughts. The camera shows him sitting against a wall, his headlamp illuminating the narrow passage ahead. "I've been looking for over an hour," he says, his voice breaking slightly. "I've checked every passage we came through. He's just gone." In this moment of quiet desperation, Ryan notices something he hadn't seen before. A small piece of reflective tape stuck to a rock near the floor of the passage. It's identical to the markers they had placed earlier, but this one is in a location Ryan doesn't recognize. "That's not one of ours," he murmurs, leaning closer to examine it. "At least, I don't think it is." With no other leads, Ryan decides to follow this new marker. It leads him down a passage they hadn't explored previously, a tight crawlway that branches off from their original route. "Michael?" he calls as he enters the unfamiliar tunnel. "Are you down here?" The passage continues for several hundred feet, gradually widening into a small chamber. As Ryan's light sweeps across the space, he freezes. "Michael!" he shouts, rushing forward. The camera shows Michael sitting against the far wall of the chamber, his headlamp off, knees pulled up to his chest. "Ryan!" Michael looks up, his expression a mixture of relief and confusion. "How did you find me?" "I've been looking everywhere for you," Ryan exclaims, the camera shaking as he embraces his brother. "What happened? Why did you leave the entrance to the squeeze?" Michael's explanation is disjointed and confused. He claims he heard Ryan calling for help from a different passage and went to investigate. When he couldn't find his brother, he became disoriented and eventually found himself in this unfamiliar chamber. "But I never called for help," Ryan insists. "I was on the other side of the squeeze the whole time." "I heard you," Michael maintains, his voice hollow. "Clear as day. You were calling my name, saying you were stuck. It sounded exactly like you." The brothers eventually make their way back to the surface, both visibly shaken by the experience. In a follow-up video posted weeks later, they discuss the incident, attempting to make sense of what happened. "Caves play tricks on you," Michael suggests. "Sound bounces around in weird ways. I probably heard an echo or something, and my mind filled in the rest." But Ryan isn't convinced. "Whatever you heard," he says quietly, "it wasn't me." The subterranean brothers continued to explore caves after the incident, but with a significant change to their approach. They now use two-way radios at all times and never venture more than a few feet from each other, even in larger chambers. Their experience in Hollow Mountain serves as a chilling reminder of how easily one can become lost in the underground world, where darkness and isolation can play tricks on even the most experienced explorers. If you're enjoying these unsettling tales from beneath the earth, now would be a perfect time to hit that subscribe button. We've got 4 more disturbing incidents to cover, and trust me, they only get more terrifying from here. Our third incident takes us across the Atlantic to the treacherous network of Thornwick Bay Cave in Yorkshire, England. In November 2019, a group of 5 experienced cavers embarked on what should have been a challenging but manageable expedition through this coastal cave system. What transpired instead was a harrowing brush with death that would leave one member of the group permanently changed. Thornwick Bay Cave is known for its unique challenges, narrow passages that flood completely during high tide, forcing explorers to time their expeditions precisely. The group, led by veteran caver William Harrison, had planned meticulously, scheduling their entry during the lowest tide of the month. "We'd been planning this for weeks," explains Allison Parker, one of the members of the expedition, in an interview she gave months after the incident. "Will had calculated the tides down to the minute. We had a 6-hour window to get in, explore the deeper sections, and get back out before the water started rising again." The footage from their expedition begins routinely enough. The team enters the cave through a narrow opening at the base of the cliff, their headlamps illuminating the glistening walls of the entrance passage. The ground is wet but passable, with small pools of seawater collected in depressions in the rock. "The tide's been out for about 2 hours, Will narrates as they move deeper into the system. "We should have plenty of time." For the first hour, the expedition proceeds according to plan. The team navigates through a series of increasingly challenging passages, some requiring them to crawl through spaces barely larger than their bodies. The cave gradually descends, taking them deeper beneath the Yorkshire coastline. Their target is a chamber known as the Cathedral, a vast space that few cavers have documented due to its difficult access. To reach it, they must first pass through a section called the Throat, a passage so narrow that cavers must crawl on their stomachs through a space less than a foot high, with the ceiling just inches from their backs. The Throat is partially submerged even at low tide, Will explains to the camera. "We'll have about 6 inches of airspace above the water. It's only about 15 feet long, but it feels like a mile when you're in there." The team prepares for this challenge, securing their equipment and mentally steeling themselves for the claustrophobic passage ahead. James Bennett, a 42-year-old geology professor and the most experienced member of the group after Will, volunteers to go first. "I've done tighter squeezes than this," James says with a confident smile. "Just keep moving forward and don't think about the weight of the rock above you." The camera shows James lying flat on his stomach at the entrance to the Throat, the beam of his headlamp reflecting off the dark water that partially fills the passage. He takes a deep breath and begins to pull himself forward, using small protrusions in the rock for leverage. For the first few feet, his progress is steady. The water is cold but shallow, allowing him to keep his face above the surface as he inches forward. But about halfway through the passage, something changes. James suddenly stops moving. "Everything all right, James?" Will calls from behind. I'm stuck, James replies, his voice tight with the beginning of panic. My harness is caught on something. The camera shows James attempting to reach behind himself to free the equipment, but the confined space makes it nearly impossible to maneuver. Can you back up? Allison suggests. I'm trying, James responds, his breathing becoming more rapid. I can't move either way. What follows is 15 minutes of increasingly desperate attempts to free James from his predicament. The other team members offer suggestions and encouragement, but the reality of the situation becomes increasingly clear. James is completely wedged in the narrowest part of the throat, unable to move forward or backward. The water's rising, James says suddenly, his voice now clearly panicked. I can feel it getting deeper. This observation sends a chill through the group. They had timed their expedition for low tide, but tidal patterns can be unpredictable, especially in cave systems where water can be funneled and amplified by the narrow passages. How fast is it rising? Will asks, his voice now tense with concern. Fast enough, James replies. It's up to my chin when I press my face to the ceiling. The situation has now transformed from challenging to life-threatening. If the water continues to rise at its current rate, James will be completely submerged within minutes, trapped in a passage too narrow for him to even turn his head to the side. We need to get him out now, Will says firmly. James, we're going to try pulling you back. It might be uncomfortable, but it's our best option. Will secures a rope to James's boots, which are just visible at the entrance to the throat. With the help of the other team members, he begins to pull, gently at first, then with increasing force. It's not working, James calls, his voice now shaking with fear. The harness is caught solid, and the water's still rising. The camera shows the water level at the entrance to the throat visibly increasing, confirming James's assessment. Time is running out. In a last desperate attempt, Will instructs James to completely deflate his lungs, making his body as small as possible, while the team pulls with all their strength. On 3, Will counts down. 1, 2, 3. The team heaves on the rope, and for a heart-stopping moment, nothing happens. Then suddenly James begins to move, slowly at first, then more quickly as he slides backward through the passage. When he finally emerges from the throat, the relief is palpable. James lies on his back, gasping for air, his face pale with shock. His caving suit is torn where it caught on a jagged piece of rock, and there's a long scratch across his back, but he's alive. The water, he manages between breaths. It's still rising, fast. The team makes the immediate decision to abort the expedition and return to the surface. Their retreat is hasty but orderly, each member acutely aware that the rising tide could potentially cut off their exit route. They reach the entrance just as the water begins to make the lower passages impassable. Outside, they discover that an unexpected storm surge has accelerated the tide's return. Had they been even 20 minutes later, their exit would have been completely submerged. In a follow-up interview 6 months after the incident, James revealed that he has not returned to caving since that day. People don't understand what it's like, he explained, his eyes distant. To be trapped in a space so tight, you can't even expand your chest to breathe properly. To feel water rising around your face, knowing that in minutes it will cover your mouth, your nose, your eyes, and there's nowhere to go, no way to fight it. He paused, then added quietly, I still dream about it. In the dreams, they don't pull me out in time. The Thornwick Bay incident serves as a stark reminder of the unforgiving nature of cave environments, where conditions can change rapidly and the margin for error is vanishingly small. Even with proper planning and experience, the underground world remains inherently dangerous, a reality that James Bennett will never forget. If this story has sent a chill down your spine, you're not alone. Take a moment to give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who appreciates these darker explorations of human experience. And remember, we're only halfway through our journey into the most disturbing caving incidents ever documented. Our 4th incident takes us to the remote wilderness of the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas, where a discovery in a previously unmapped cave system would raise disturbing questions that remain unanswered to this day. In April 2022, a property owner named Daniel Whitaker was clearing brush on his newly purchased 40-acre parcel when he noticed something unusual. a depression in the ground partially hidden by overgrowth, with cool air flowing from what appeared to be a small opening. "I've lived in cave country my whole life," Daniel explained in a local news interview. "I knew right away what I was looking at. What I didn't know was what was waiting inside." Intrigued by his discovery, Daniel contacted a local caving group to properly explore and document the opening. 2 weeks later, a team of 4 experienced cavers arrived at the property, equipped with ropes, helmets, and cameras to record their exploration. The team was led by brothers Jason and Peter Reynolds, whose YouTube channel, Descent Explorers, had gained popularity for their thorough documentation of lesser-known cave systems throughout the Ozarks. They were joined by geologist Dr. Meredith Chen and local caving expert Lucas Hargrove. "The entrance doesn't look like much," Jason narrates as their camera shows the small opening in the ground, "but you can feel the air movement. That usually means there's something substantial down there." After securing their primary rope to a nearby oak tree, the team prepares for their descent. Peter goes first, rappelling down into the darkness with his helmet camera, recording the journey. "It's a straight drop," he calls up after descending about 30 feet. "Opens into a decent-sized chamber down here. Looks promising." One by one, the team members descend into the cave. Their lights reveal a surprisingly large initial chamber with impressive formations, stalactites hanging from the ceiling like stone icicles, their surfaces glistening with moisture. "This place is pristine," Dr. Chen remarks, examining the formations. "No graffiti, no trash, no broken stalactites. I don't think anyone's been down here in modern times." The team spends the next hour mapping the initial chamber and its immediate offshoots, documenting the various formations and features. The cave appears to be extensive, with multiple passages branching off in different directions. "We're going to focus on the main line today," Jason explains to the camera. "Follow the primary water flow and see where it leads us." The passage they choose gradually narrows, forcing them to crouch and eventually crawl as they push deeper into the earth. The floor becomes increasingly muddy, with small pools of water collecting in depressions. "The water table is high in this area," Dr. Chen explains. "We might encounter flooded sections further in." After nearly 40 minutes of careful progress through the narrowing passage, the team emerges into another large chamber, this one even more impressive than the first. Their lights can barely reach the ceiling, and the far walls disappear into darkness. "This is incredible," Lucas says, his voice echoing in the vast space. "This chamber must be at least 100 feet across." As the team spreads out to explore this new discovery, Peter's light catches something unusual on the far side of the chamber. "Hey guys," he calls, his voice suddenly tense. "You need to see this." The camera follows as the team converges on Peter's position. What they find sends a collective chill through the group. "Are those shoes?" Meredith asks, her light illuminating what appears to be a pile of footwear scattered across the muddy floor. The camera zooms in, revealing dozens of shoes in various states of decay. Some appear relatively new, while others are clearly decades old, their materials deteriorating in the damp environment. "What the hell?" Jason murmurs, kneeling to examine the collection. "There must be 50 pairs here." But the shoes aren't the most disturbing discovery. As the team's lights sweep across the area, they reveal what appear to be bones scattered among the footwear, long, yellowed fragments partially embedded in the mud. "Those look like animal bones," Lucas says, examining one of the larger pieces. "Deer, maybe, or elk." Dr. Chen kneels to inspect the remains more closely. "Some of these definitely appear to be cervid. Deer family," she confirms, "but others..." She hesitates, picking up a smaller fragment. "I'm not sure about all of them." The team continues to document the strange collection, their initial excitement now tempered by unease. As they explore further into the chamber, Jason's light catches something else. A collection of what appear to be much larger bones arranged in a rough circle. "Guys," he calls, his voice now barely above a whisper, "over here." The camera shows what can only be described as a spine, vertebrae still connected, curving out of the mud in an unnatural arc. Nearby lies what appears to be a skull, partially crushed but recognizably humanoid in shape. That can't be human," Peter says, though the uncertainty in his voice is clear. Dr. Chen examines the remains carefully, her expression grave. "I can't make a definitive statement," she says finally, "but the morphology is consistent with human remains. Very old ones." The atmosphere in the cave has changed completely. What began as an exciting exploration has transformed into something far more disturbing. The team decides to document everything thoroughly and then exit the cave to report their findings to authorities. "We need to contact the sheriff's department," Jason says as they prepare to leave, "and possibly the state archaeological service. If these are human remains, this could be a historical burial site, or something worse." The team makes their way back to the surface, the excitement of their discovery now overshadowed by the unsettling nature of what they found. They immediately contact local law enforcement, who arrive at the property within hours. What followed was a joint investigation by the county sheriff's department, the state archaeological service, and eventually the FBI. The cave was sealed off from public access, and a thorough examination of the site was conducted over the following weeks. The official report, released 3 months later, offered an explanation that many found difficult to accept. According to authorities, the remains were primarily animal, with some Native American human remains dating back approximately 1,500 years. The cave, they concluded, had likely been used as a burial site by indigenous peoples. As for the shoes, the report suggested they had been carried into the cave by floodwaters during particularly heavy rainfall events over the decades. The property sits in a watershed area, and during extreme weather, water can flow with surprising force through otherwise dry channels. But not everyone was satisfied with this explanation. In a follow-up video posted months after the incident, Jason Reynolds expressed his skepticism. "I've been in dozens of caves affected by flooding," he said. "I've seen what water carries in. It's random, sticks, plastic bottles, general debris. What we found wasn't random. The shoes were concentrated in one area, and some of them were arranged in pairs." Dr. Chen, speaking in the same video, was more measured but equally puzzled. "The official explanation is plausible," she admitted, "but it doesn't account for everything we observed. The distribution pattern of both the shoes and the remains was unusual. Nature tends toward chaos. What we saw had elements of order." The property owner, Daniel Whitaker, eventually sold the land and moved away, reportedly uncomfortable with the attention the discovery had brought. The cave entrance was permanently sealed with concrete by the new owners, effectively burying whatever secrets might remain undiscovered in its depths. To this day, local rumors persist about the true nature of what was found in what is now known locally as Shoe Cave. Some suggest it was a dumping ground for a serial killer who operated in the region during the 1970s and 80s, a period when several hikers disappeared from nearby trails, their case is still unsolved. Others point to old local legends about the cave system being a thin place, a location where the boundary between our world and something else becomes permeable. These stories, dating back to early settler accounts, describe people entering certain caves only to emerge changed, if they emerged at all. Whatever the truth, the discovery in the Ozark Cave remains one of the most disturbing documented incidents in modern caving history. A reminder that beneath our feet lies a world of darkness where the unexplained sometimes surfaces, challenging our understanding of what should and shouldn't exist. If these stories are keeping you on the edge of your seat, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We still have 2 more incidents to cover, each more disturbing than the last, and you won't want to miss them. Our 5th incident takes us to the ancient limestone caverns of Cueva del Agua in northern Spain, where a team of international researchers encountered something that defies conventional explanation, an experience that would leave them questioning not just what lies in the darkness, but the very nature of reality itself. In July 2018, a joint Spanish-British research expedition ventured into the lesser-explored sections of Cueva del Agua, a vast cave system known for its underwater passages and archaeological significance. The team consisted of 6 specialists: Dr. Elena Vasquez, a Spanish archaeologist, Dr. Marcus Harlow, a British geologist, Sofia Reyes, a cave diving expert, twins Carlos and Javier Moreno, experienced local guides, and Dr. Nadia Patel, a cultural anthropologist documenting the expedition. Their mission was to investigate rumors of ancient cave paintings in a remote chamber that had only recently been discovered after a partial collapse revealed a previously sealed passage. The expedition was meticulously planned, with state-of-the-art equipment and enough supplies for a 3-day underground journey. We were all experienced in our fields, Dr. Patel explained in an interview a year after the incident. Elena and Marcus had been exploring caves for decades. The Moreno brothers knew Cueva del Agua better than anyone alive. We had no reason to expect anything beyond the usual challenges of a deep cave expedition. The footage from their journey begins with the team entering the cave through its main entrance, a wide opening in the side of a limestone cliff. The initial passages are well mapped and relatively easy to navigate, with smooth floors and high ceilings that allow the team to walk upright. We're about 2 hours in now, Dr. Vasquez narrates as they move deeper into the system. So far, everything is as expected. The real challenge will begin when we reach the labyrinth. The labyrinth, as they called it, was a complex network of intersecting passages about 4 kilometers into the cave system. Beyond this point, the cave was poorly mapped, with only sketchy accounts from previous explorers to guide them. The team reaches this junction by the end of their first day underground. They set up a base camp in a large chamber just before the labyrinth, planning to rest before tackling the more challenging sections ahead. Tomorrow we'll enter the new territory, Dr. Harlow explains to the camera as they prepare their sleeping arrangements. Based on the accounts we've gathered, the chamber with the potential paintings should be about 3 hours beyond the labyrinth, assuming we can find the correct route. The footage from the second day shows the team navigating the labyrinth, a disorienting maze of similar-looking passages that branch and reconnect in confusing patterns. The Moreno brothers lead the way, marking their route with reflective tape to ensure they can find their way back. It's easy to get turned around in here, Carlos explains. The passages all look the same, and there are few distinctive features to orient yourself. After nearly 4 hours of careful navigation, longer than expected, they finally emerge from the labyrinth into a series of larger chambers. The relief is palpable as the confined spaces give way to more comfortable dimensions. We should be approaching the collapse zone soon, Javier says, consulting a crude map drawn by a previous explorer. The new passage should be visible as a dark crack in the eastern wall. Sure enough, after another hour of progress, they find what they're looking for: a narrow fissure in the wall of a medium-sized chamber, partially obscured by fallen rocks. Recent seismic activity had apparently shifted enough material to reveal this opening that had been sealed for centuries, perhaps millennia. This is it, Dr. Vasquez says, her excitement evident. Beyond this point, no modern human has ventured. We're about to see what's been hidden all this time. The team carefully clears away loose rocks to make the passage safer, then prepares to enter the newly revealed section. The opening is narrow but passable, requiring them to proceed single file. Dr. Harlow goes first, squeezing through the fissure with his camera recording. What he finds on the other side causes him to fall silent for several seconds. "My God," he finally whispers. "Elena, you need to see this." The camera pans across a chamber unlike any they've encountered so far. The ceiling rises at least 30 feet above them, and the walls curve in a nearly perfect circle. But what's truly remarkable is what covers those walls. Hundreds of handprints in various colors: red, black, yellow, and white, arranged in intricate spiral patterns that seem to swirl around the chamber. These are ancient, Dr. Vasquez breathes as she examines the prints. Possibly Upper Paleolithic, 15,000 years old at least. But the handprints aren't the most unusual feature of the chamber. In the center of the floor is a perfectly circular pool of water, so still it reflects the ceiling like a mirror. The water is clear but appears unusually dark, as if the pool might be very deep. "This doesn't look natural," Dr. Patel remarks, examining the pool's edge. "The circumference is too perfect, and look at how the stone is worn around the rim, almost like steps leading down into the water." As the team documents the chamber, taking photographs and samples for later analysis, they notice something else. The temperature is significantly warmer than in the rest of the cave system, despite there being no obvious heat source. "It's at least 10 degrees warmer in here," Sophia notes, removing her outer layer. "That shouldn't be possible this deep underground without geothermal activity, but I don't see any vents or evidence of that." The team spends several hours documenting the chamber, careful not to disturb anything. As they work, a subtle change begins to occur, one that none of them notices at first, but which becomes increasingly apparent as time passes. Does anyone else feel strange? Carlos asks, eventually pausing in his work. Like we're being watched? The others admit to similar sensations, a pressure in their ears, a slight disorientation, a feeling of being observed from all directions at once. It's probably just the change in air pressure, Dr. Harlow suggests, though he sounds uncertain. Or maybe the higher CO2 levels in this sealed chamber. But as they continue their work, the sensations intensify. The footage begins to show subtle distortions. Moments where the image seems to warp slightly, or where shadows move in ways that don't correspond to the team's lights. I think we should wrap this up, Dr. Vasquez says finally, her voice tense. We've got enough documentation for now. We can always come back with a larger team. The others agree and they begin to pack their equipment. It's at this moment that Sophia, who has been examining the pool, calls out in alarm. There's something in the water, she says, her light directed at the dark surface. I saw movement. The team gathers around the pool, their lights playing across its surface. For several seconds, they see nothing. Then suddenly the water ripples, a slight disturbance that spreads from the center outward. Probably just air bubbles from the bottom, Javier suggests. These karst systems often have underwater currents. But even as he speaks, the ripples increase, becoming more pronounced. The camera captures what happens next. The center of the pool begins to bulge upward, as if something is rising from below. We need to leave, Dr. Patel says urgently. Now! The team doesn't argue. They gather their remaining equipment and move quickly toward the exit fissure. Carlos goes first, followed by Dr. Vasquez and Dr. Harlow. Sophia's next, then Dr. Patel. Javier, as the most experienced guide, takes the rear position. The camera, now carried by Dr. Harlow, shows the team moving rapidly through the fissure and back into the main cave system. Their headlamps cut through the darkness as they retrace their steps, following the markers they left earlier. Is everyone here? Carlos calls once they put some distance between themselves and the circular chamber. Sound off. One by one, they confirm their presence, except for Javier, who should have been right behind Dr. Patel. Javier, Carlos calls, his voice echoing in the passage. Javier, where are you? Silence. He was right behind me, Dr. Patel says, her voice shaking slightly. I heard him enter the fissure. Carlos immediately turns back, intending to search for his brother. Dr. Harlow and Sophia go with him, while Dr. Vasquez and Dr. Patel wait at their current position. The camera follows as the three return to the fissure. Carlos calls his brother's name repeatedly, his voice growing more desperate with each unanswered call. When they reach the fissure, they find it exactly as they left it, a narrow opening in the rock wall. Carlos doesn't hesitate, immediately squeezing through to check the chamber beyond. What he finds defies explanation. The chamber's empty, not just of Javier, but of everything they had documented earlier. The walls are bare limestone, with no trace of the handprints that had covered them. The floor is solid rock, no circular pool, no sign that water had ever been present. This isn't possible, Carlos whispers, his light sweeping frantically across the chamber. This isn't the same place. It can't be. But the markers they left at the entrance to the fissure confirm that this is indeed the same passage they had entered earlier. Somehow the chamber has completely transformed, or perhaps it never existed as they remembered it. The team spends another hour searching for Javier, calling his name and checking every possible side passage. But there's no trace of him, no response to their calls, no sign of his passage. Finally, with their air and light supplies running low, they make the difficult decision to return to the surface and seek help. The journey back through the labyrinth is tense and silent, each member of the team struggling to process what has happened. When they reach the surface, they immediately contact local authorities. A massive search operation is launched, with specialized cave rescue teams from across Spain converging on Cueva del Agua. For 2 weeks, they scour the cave system, focusing particularly on the area beyond the labyrinth. They never find Javier Moreno, nor do they find the circular chamber as the team described it. The passage beyond the fissure leads only to a small, unremarkable room with no pool, no handprints, and no obvious exit except the way they entered. In the aftermath, the remaining team members struggle to explain what happened. Medical examinations reveal elevated levels of carbon dioxide in their blood, suggesting possible hypercapnia, a condition that can cause hallucinations and confusion. This becomes the official explanation. The team experienced collective hallucinations due to poor air quality in the sealed chamber. But privately, none of them accept this explanation. "We all saw the same thing," Dr. Patel insisted in her interview. "We all documented the same chamber, the same handprints, the same pool. Our equipment recorded it. How could 5 people hallucinate identical details?" Indeed, the most disturbing aspect of the incident is that their cameras and equipment should have preserved evidence of what they saw. Yet when they reviewed the footage later, they found something inexplicable. The video shows them entering the fissure and emerging into a chamber, but it's not the chamber they remember. The footage shows a small, ordinary cave room with bare walls and a dry, rocky floor. It shows them moving around this space, apparently documenting features that aren't visible in the recording. And most disturbingly, it shows all 6 team members throughout, including Javier, who appears to exit the chamber with them before the video abruptly ends in static. Carlos Moreno never accepted his brother's disappearance. He returned to Cueva del Agua repeatedly over the following years, searching for the chamber they had found. On his last documented visit in December 2020, he ventured into the cave alone, telling friends he had figured out the pattern and knew how to find the true entrance to the circular chamber. He never emerged from the cave. His body was found 3 days later in a section of the labyrinth, apparently having died from a fall. Clutched in his hand was a small object that authorities initially identified as a stone, but which was later determined to be made of an unidentifiable material, a perfectly smooth black sphere about the size of a marble. The sphere disappeared from the evidence locker 3 days later. No explanation was ever provided. The Cueva del Agua incident remains one of the most perplexing cases in modern caving history. A reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers underground are not the ones we can see or understand, but those that challenge our very perception of reality. If you're still with us after that chilling account, you might want to check that your doors are locked before we continue. And if you haven't already, now would be a good time to hit that subscribe button. Our final incident is perhaps the most disturbing of all, a case that blurs the line between exploration and something far darker. Our final incident takes us to the crystal clear waters of Blue Hole Spring in New Mexico, where what began as a record-breaking dive attempt ended in a tragedy so profound it would forever change the world of cave diving. Blue Hole Spring is a natural artesian well, a circular pool of water approximately 80 feet in diameter that descends to a depth of 130 feet before opening into a complex system of underwater caves. The water is remarkably clear, with visibility often exceeding 100 feet, making it a popular destination for divers. But beneath the tourist-friendly main pool lies a challenging and dangerous cave system that has claimed the lives of several experienced divers over the years. In 2010, the entrance to these deeper caves was sealed with a grate to prevent further fatalities. However, authorized exploration of the system was still permitted for properly qualified individuals. One such individual was Richard Markham, a 48-year-old commercial airline pilot and veteran cave diver with over 20 years of experience. In September 2020, Richard received permission to attempt a record-breaking dive into the deepest sections of Blue Hole. The plan was to document the cave system beyond the previous exploration limit, explains Diane Hartley, Richard's longtime diving partner, in an interview she gave months after the incident. Richard had been preparing for this dive for over a year. Every detail was meticulously planned. The footage from Richard's dive begins routinely enough. We see him performing final equipment checks at the surface, his movements deliberate and practiced. He's using a closed-circuit rebreather, specialized equipment that recycles exhaled breath, extending the possible duration of deep dives. "Everything looks good," Richard says to the camera mounted on his helmet. "Oxygen sensors calibrated, carbon dioxide scrubber fresh, bailout tanks pressurized. I'm ready to go." With a final thumbs up to the support team on the surface, Richard descends into the blue waters. The visibility is exceptional, allowing the camera to capture the stunning underwater landscape, the smooth walls of the main shaft giving way to more complex geological features as he descends past 100 feet. At 130 feet, Richard reaches the grate that blocks casual access to the deeper cave system. With special permission from local authorities, he unlocks the gate and passes through, securing it behind him. Passing through the restriction now, he narrates for the camera, entering the primary cave system. Beyond the gate, the cave opens up into a larger chamber before narrowing again into a complex series of tunnels. Richard follows the guideline left by previous explorers, his powerful lights illuminating the crystalline formations that adorn the walls. For the first hour, the dive proceeds according to plan. Richard descends gradually, carefully managing his gas supplies and decompression obligations. His commentary is professional and focused, noting interesting features and marking his progress on a waterproof slate. At a depth of approximately 220 feet, Richard reaches the previous exploration limit. A narrow restriction that had turned back earlier attempts to push deeper into the system. "This is it," he says, his voice slightly distorted through his breathing apparatus. Beyond this point is uncharted territory. The restriction is challenging, a horizontal crack barely wider than Richard's shoulders, requiring him to remove his tanks and push them ahead of him. But with careful maneuvering, he manages to squeeze through. What he finds on the other side causes him to fall silent for several seconds. "Oh my God," he finally whispers. "I don't believe it." The camera shows the beam of his light falling on what appears to be diving equipment, an old-style tank and regulator, clearly having been there for many years. Beside it lies what can only be described as human remains, a skull and partial skeleton, partially embedded in the silt of the cave floor. "This is unexpected," Richard says, his voice now tense. "These remains appear to be a diver, someone who made it through the restriction but never made it back." After documenting the discovery, Richard makes the decision to continue his exploration. The passage beyond the remains opens into a larger chamber with multiple branching tunnels. "I'll need to be careful with my penetration limits here," he narrates. "Air management is critical." He selects the largest of the tunnels and continues his exploration, laying new guideline as he goes. The passage descends sharply, taking him past 250 feet, well into what divers call the deep zone, where nitrogen narcosis and oxygen toxicity become serious concerns. After another 20 minutes of careful progress, Richard's light catches something unusual in the distance, a reflection that shouldn't exist this deep in a cave system. "That's odd," he murmurs, swimming closer. "There's something reflective ahead." As he approaches, the camera reveals what appears to be another set of diving equipment, this one even older than the first, the metal components heavily corroded. This doesn't make sense," Richard says, his voice now showing signs of confusion, possibly the early effects of nitrogen narcosis. "This equipment looks like it's from the 1960s or earlier. No one was cave diving this deep back then, especially not in this system." Despite the unsettling discovery, Richard decides to push on. The passage continues to descend, taking him beyond 270 feet, deeper than anyone has ever ventured in this system. It's at this point that things begin to go wrong. First, there's a momentary failure of Richard's primary light. The camera shows the beam flickering and then stabilizing, but the brief plunge into darkness clearly rattles him. "Light malfunction," he reports, his breathing noticeably faster. "Backup systems functioning. I should probably turn back." But instead of retreating, Richard continues forward, seemingly drawn by what his light has just revealed, a large chamber opening up ahead, its dimensions exceeding anything previously discovered in the system. "I need to document this," he says, swimming forward into the vast space. "Just a few minutes to record the dimensions, then I'll head back." The chamber is indeed impressive, a cathedral-like space with a ceiling that disappears into darkness above. Richard's light sweeps across the walls, revealing intricate formations and what appear to be ancient flow marks in the rock. But as he reaches the center of the chamber, his light falls on something that defies explanation. A perfect circle of what appear to be diving masks arranged on the floor of the cave, surrounding what looks like a crude altar of stacked rocks. "What the hell is this?" Richard whispers, his voice now clearly affected by the depth. "This can't be natural. Someone made this." The camera shows him swimming closer to the bizarre arrangement, his movements becoming less coordinated as the effects of depth take their toll. "I need to document this," he says, his speech slightly slurred. "No one will believe." It's at this moment that Richard's rebreather issues a warning alarm, a high-pitched beep indicating a system malfunction. The camera shows him checking his handset, his movements now alarmingly slow. Oxygen sensors disagreeing, he mumbles. Possible solenoid failure. This is a critical emergency in technical diving. A malfunctioning rebreather can deliver either too much oxygen, leading to seizures, or too little, resulting in unconsciousness. Either outcome would be fatal at this depth. Richard attempts to switch to his bailout system, separate tanks carried specifically for emergencies, but his movements are uncoordinated, the effects of narcosis now clearly impairing his motor skills. Can't get the regulator, he says, his voice barely audible. Something's wrong with my hands. The camera shows his gloved hands fumbling with the equipment, unable to complete the simple task of reaching for his backup regulator. It's a terrifying demonstration of how quickly things can go wrong in the underwater environment. In a final moment of clarity, Richard appears to realize the severity of his situation. He turns away from the circle of mass and begins swimming toward the tunnel entrance, clearly intending to retreat to safety. "Need to get out," he gasps. "Something not right here. Not right at all." But it's too late. The camera shows his movements becoming increasingly erratic, his breathing labored. Then suddenly he stops swimming altogether, floating motionless in the water. They're here, he whispers, his voice now eerily calm. "I can see them now. They've always been here." The camera shows nothing but the empty chamber, the circle of mass on the floor below. But Richard is clearly seeing something else, something invisible to the camera. "Beautiful," he murmurs. "So beautiful." These are his final words. Moments later, Richard convulses violently, the camera capturing his desperate struggle before he goes completely still. The footage continues for another 23 minutes, showing only his lifeless body drifting slowly in the current before the battery finally dies. Richard Markham's body was recovered 3 days later by a specialized recovery team. The official cause of death was listed as equipment failure, leading to hypoxia, compounded by the effects of nitrogen narcosis and oxygen toxicity at extreme depth. But the recovery team reported something disturbing. They found no circle of mass, no altar-like arrangement of rocks. The chamber was empty except for Richard's body and equipment, and despite extensive searching, they found no trace of the other diving equipment Richard had documented earlier in his dive. The footage from Richard's camera became the subject of intense debate in the diving community. Some suggested that the bizarre discoveries were hallucinations caused by gas toxicity, a known risk of deep diving. Others pointed to the clarity of the footage, arguing that the equipment and the circle of mass were too detailed, too consistent to be mere hallucinations. Perhaps most disturbing was the revelation that came months later, when researchers looking into the history of Blue Hole discovered records of at least 7 divers who had gone missing in the system between 1953 and 1976, long before the modern era of cave diving. No bodies had ever been recovered, and the incidents had largely been forgotten. 7 missing divers. 7 sets of equipment never recovered. In the wake of the tragedy, local authorities permanently sealed the entrance to the deeper cave system, filling the restriction with concrete to prevent any future attempts to explore beyond the main pool. Diane Hartley, Richard's diving partner, has her own theory about what happened in the depths of Blue Hole. "Richard was one of the most methodical, careful divers I've ever known," she said in her interview. "His equipment was meticulously maintained. The chances of a catastrophic failure were minimal." She paused, then added quietly, "I've watched that footage hundreds of times. I've spoken to experts in diving physiology, in equipment, in cave geology. None of them can explain everything we see in that video. But there's one thing I'm certain of. Richard wasn't alone down there, and whatever was with him, it didn't want him to leave." Blue Hole Spring remains a popular diving destination, its crystal clear waters continuing to attract visitors from around the world. But few who swim in its inviting blue waters know the full story of what may lie beneath the sealed grate, a mystery that claimed Richard Markham and possibly many others before him. As we conclude our journey through these 6 disturbing caving incidents, one thing becomes clear. The world beneath our feet holds secrets that perhaps were never meant to be discovered. Caves represent one of the last truly unexplored frontiers on our planet. Places where darkness has reigned undisturbed for millions of years. And perhaps in that ancient darkness, things have evolved or arrived that defy our understanding of what should exist in our world. The next time you stand at the mouth of a cave, peering into that primal darkness, remember these stories. Remember Thomas Reeves in the Chamber of Shoes. Remember the brothers in Hollow Mountain and the voice that wasn't there. Remember James Bennett's brush with rising waters in Thornick Bay. Remember the disturbing discovery in the Ozark Cave. Remember the team that lost one of their own in Cueva del Agua. And remember Richard Markham, who ventured too deep and found something waiting for him. Remember that some depths are not meant to be plumbed, some passages not meant to be traversed, and sometimes the true horror isn't what you might find in the darkness, but that the darkness might find something in you. If you've enjoyed this exploration of the unexplained, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And share your own experiences in the comments below. Until next time, sleep well, and maybe keep a light on tonight.